Alright, hey everyone. So I'm going to attempt to explain something that I think I've been trying to explain in text, but I don't think it comes off, or it's just too much text, or if I'm just not explaining it very well in text, maybe I could have probably put it through AI or whatever. Um, I also too, don't mind me. I'm now trying to go through and do and rework all of the code that I currently have because I just got the latest stuff for basis network code and everything like that, and a lot of the stuff that I have right now is not happy at the moment because I need to figure out an alternative to NetID, player network NetID. I'm looking at the basis thing here. Player, it looks like net player ID, but I don't know. Well, anyway, like I could explain I could explain my point about this. I should be able to just do it in a way that it shouldn't be too complicated. Um, but as I'm trying to explain this, I have to show you, and I won't be able to like show it in action right now because there's a bunch of script errors because I'm just now getting my hands on the latest stuff, and I've got to fix a bunch of these code errors that popped up because a lot of stuff is and functionality has changed in the latest build of basis and everything like that. In which case I have to update the server on Steam and rebuild the all this stuff. So there's all this other complicated stuff. All right. So one thing that you might know about is that I've already done functionality for the toggle chat bubble. I've done functionality for a personal camera. I've done like very rudimentary toggle for a personal mirror and things like that, right? And one of the things that I'm having to come to grips with, or at least that's been a showstopper for me to really be able to truly progress, is that I feel as though we need to have a system for the player utility. So like a utility management, right? So a player utility manager would look kind of like this. It would be a base class, or it would be a class that manages a base class from which all player add-ons are derived. In other words, so deriving from code, we would basically anytime we want to make a new add-on to the player, such as having a script that pops up a little thing that's attached to your head on your HUD um, whenever somebody joins or leaves the lobby, right? Now, there's an infinite possibility of like whatever we can do once we derive from this base class that is being managed by a player utility manager, right? But we need to have a player utility manager script of some kind. That way, we can just slot in our UI elements, um, anything really. Like anything that's attached to the player is a player add-on, and all player add-ons should be organized in such a way as to be like a few very basic bits of functionality. Otherwise, we're going to be reinventing the wheel every time somebody makes a new type of player camera or some kind of a thing for like doing, every time somebody makes a new add-on, they're going to have to figure out how to reinvent the wheel on how to attach the object to the player and everything like that. Also, too, it's a little bit complicated how things are attached to the player because we have this thing called the local player and then we have simulated players over the network. The local player is you. You are the local player. When you are playing the game, you are the local player. There are some things that will be attached to you as the local player that is not necessarily going to be sent over the network. The personal mirror, for example, is a good example of a thing that will be attached to the player that will have a menu element, right? So we would have two add-ons. We would have a ability to toggle the personal mirror on and off, which would be a add-on for the UI of whatever it is that this project is currently using, and that would point to a addressable to a UI element, and that UI element would be derived from the base class of the player utility manager um, like management system. So there would be like, you know, a array of uh, player add-ons that the player utility manager could will will then be able to uh, iterate through and like properly set up. So like the menu in order to turn the mirror on is a player add-on. All right. And then the personal mirror itself is also a player add-on, right? And they're attached to the player in different ways depending on the options. The ability to toggle the personal mirror on has to be a UI element that is either attached to your left or right hand, or the hamburger menu, which is the main menu that that pops up, the big menu. In VR chat, there are two menus. There's three. There's the radial menu that is attached to left or right hand, a small menu, which is a small form menu that pops up when you click the button to just bring up like all of that stuff that's attached to your hand, and then there's a large menu that appears in front of you. When you go into the large menu, it has more options and it's more robust, and it pops up like a bigger thing that is actually like not necessarily directly attached to the player in a specific way. These are examples of things that would be attached to the local player, right? But not all of these add-ons are going to be attached to just the local player. Some of these things, such as the personal camera or the toggle chat button here, buttle, did I say buttle? Is an example of something that would now needs to be managed for every single player in the entire lobby, because every player that you see around you has a chat bubble always floating over their head, and if they decide to use it, it will appear with the text that they input into the chat bubble. And it's the same thing with the personal camera. Every single player, whenever they use the personal camera, will have a lens that is networked over the network that allows everyone to see and hear when the camera is being used by another player. So all 218 players are going to have a networked object that is properly attached to all of those players, all 218 of them in the lobby. And we need to also have the same thing for the chat bubble. So some of these objects will be attached to the local player in a way that is only just for us. And in some cases, we'll have to actually generate new versions of every single object that is networked on all of the players in the entire lobby as well. And in some cases, we'll actually do both, a special thing that only appears for the local player for you, but other players can still see something that that you have turned on or something like that. So it's possible that we need to have something that just manages all of this in a slick way rather than just reinventing the wheel and making giant spaghetti code monster that's probably going to fucking haunt us until the end of time. So that's what I'm trying to explain with this. We really need to have something that is actually very much a core component of basis that makes sense for that's something that we can all utilize in a slick and compartmentalized manner, utilizing a base class from which all player add-ons are derived, and all of them will have some simple checkboxes and things that are necessary in order for them to behave in a specific manner, which is going to be the same thing for pretty much everything that we always do. I don't give a fuck what it is, but the base class will generally cover pretty much every possible use case for everything that we can ever need if we write it correctly. Now, that's what I'm talking about in the basis Discord. Now, I know that this is difficult to understand, and I know that there are probably a lot of people who are hearing what I'm saying and still don't quite understand what I'm talking about. But I do think that this is something that we should tackle as part of the framework itself. This is not something that Joe Blow, like me, should be doing. This is something that is very much a core fundamental thing that will need optimization, is probably going to affect the networking, is probably going to affect the maximum number of players that we can have in a lobby, is probably going to have, need to be very, very astutely optimized and properly integrated into the core thing so that when some shitty programmer like myself is writing add-ons that I'm just deriving from a base class and not reinventing the wheel and making spaghetti code that I am repeating myself now. So that is the main thing that I'm trying to get across with this. We have to have a system like this. Now, I right now all I'm doing is I'm making it so that there is a single chat bubble just sitting here, and then I could toggle it on, and then I could type in whatever I want, and I can kind of show people what it is exactly that I have in mind. But that's not going to work for the final product, because the final product, we need to have a menu element that is attached to the player that allows each player to individually toggle their chat bubble and interact with it individually on their own terms so that we can see what every player in the entire lobby is saying in the chat bubble on their like above their heads. Okay? It's kind of complicated. There's a lot going on there. And it's not something that we should be rewriting for every last bit of functionality in the entire code base. So when I'm writing this gigantic book of text, which I think is just not coming through at all, like I'm not making any sense. I can kind of tell because nobody's really like responding, or they're not like either that or I'm just stating the obvious or something, which I don't really think this is that obvious. I think that this might just be like my hot take on how to do this, and maybe there's a totally better way to do all of it. But I really do fucking think that we do need to have a base class that we derive all player add-ons from. Either it be UI elements, or fucking race cars, guns. I don't fucking care. Like all of those things need to come from a base class that is attached to the player. It doesn't matter what the fuck it is. People could come up with anything that they want once the base class is there, and they can just derive from that, and then we can just slot those things in for our personal project or remove, add, remove things at our leisure. Am I making sense? I think that this should be pretty clear at this point in time. I can go ahead and I can end the video now.